Welcome to Education Table Talk. This is your June. I can't believe it's June already. This is our June Ed Table Talk show. We have some wonderful guests with us on this show. Really a good group, and we're going to be talking about a little bit more sort of open topic, but I think something that is that everybody's keenly interested in, and that is this issue about big publishers and understanding the role that big publishers are going to play in education moving ahead. We're calling this show, Can the Spanish Armada Transform into the British Fleet? Apparently people don't learn history as much as they used to. I had a few people who asked me, what does the British fleet and the Spanish Armada have to do with big publishing? So I had to explain, and maybe I'll just mention it up front. Again, the two came at one another early in history, looking back in sort of the 1400s, and the Spanish having very, very large ships and being less maneuverable and very strict in terms of how they engaged, and the British fleet being far, far more agile and a little bit more creative in their approach, and really just really took out the Spanish Armada and became what eventually became, the leaders of seafaring Europe, at least. So, and on our call today, we do have Jaume, who is actually from Spain. So, Jaume, I just want to let you know, no offense by bringing up that particular reference. I think that.
Okay, I never took it that way. I was thinking about that.
Oh,
but,
I'm glad I mentioned it then. So, I think that what makes
I was thinking about that. Yes.
Yeah. What makes this topic particularly interesting is that these publishers have really been the core of our educational institution, particularly in the U.S., but I think overseas as well. In terms of providing core curriculum, in terms of being the leaders in terms of providing the essential materials for teaching and learning. And yet we've seen a lot of innovation come from areas outside of those organizations. We've seen those organizations purchase, particularly groups like Pearson, purchase in terms of their growth strategies, in terms of acquiring customers and acquiring new technologies. How successful they've been in terms of incorporating those technologies or different instructional strategies will be certainly part of our conversation today, and how well that they're able to adapt to changing demands in terms of education and how much they're wed to their existing business models will be the topic of our conversation. So we have three really great guests, as I mentioned today. So I'm going to go ahead and have them introduce themselves, and I'm going to start with you, Jaume. We've known each other for just about 2 years now. So, Jaume, give a little bit about your background.
Okay, I have a traditional background on one side, and I own a traditional publishing educational company specialized on K-12, and we publish books for Spain and all the countries in Latin America. And then when we saw the digital wave coming and we're trying not to sink, and that's the Spanish Armada, then we decided to create something called EdBook based on HTML5, and something called Teaching, which is a social educational network also for teachers. So we're trying to make new books and trying to be more agile on them, and as I said, trying not to sink in this new digital era.
Perfect. And I know, Jaume, you and I met at an IPA meeting now probably a year and a half ago, and one of the reasons I invited you to be on it, you had some clear opinions about the direction traditional publishers have gone, and even your role as a traditional publisher, but then really breaking outside of that. I think you'll contribute great to this. Well, good.
Yes,
thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Jaume.
Oh, just that I believe in the change inside the company, not just outsourcing that. That's going to be my point.
Good. Well, we'll dig into that. So let me go next to Dan Caton. Dan, I think I first really met you when you were with Pearson, and then later McGraw. But I know you have a long history before that.
Yeah, well, I have done most jobs that there are to do in the instructional materials industry, sales, marketing, certainly a lot of product development and so on. Prior to that, I was a middle school teacher for 6 years in Southern California, but then got into this industry and have worked in just about every area of it, even supervised a warehouse at one point. Starting in the early 80s, I got involved with digital instructional materials and have done that ever since, and at one point worked for a pure digital instruction company. Before becoming president of Pearson Learning Group and then McGraw-Hill Learning Group and then all of McGraw-Hill School Education, which I left last year to start a consulting business where I try to advise educators and people doing educational resources on how to do better at what they do.
And also, not to take this the wrong way, and to get high, given where you live.
Yes, I do. I live up in the Colorado mountains now, and I am actually looking out my office window at snow on the peaks. So we are up fairly high, and that's no reference to the changing laws around certain controlled substances elsewhere.
That's right. And last but certainly not least, Dick Casamon, a longtime friend. And Dick, you've certainly served in a number of different roles in a lot of different organizations. So maybe give us a little bit about your background.
Well, I'll need about 30 minutes just to do that. But thank you, Michael. I'm a product of the 60s. What can I tell you? I woke up one day and I realized that things weren't going the way they were supposed to, and it seemed to all stem from education. So I left my studies. I was an architectural student at Harvard and went to teach in the Boston Public Schools, where I was an art teacher. And from there, it's just gone in all directions, taking advantage of and looking forward to opportunities as they were presented. I worked for 10 different companies, both print and non-print, both big and small, both consumer and education. I also worked for Apple, Apple and Microsoft. I worked for a lot of different groups, both on the West Coast and on the East Coast. And I've enjoyed the opportunity to move around from place to place in order to see how problems have been solved, how problems are identified and how they've been solved. And most recently, I've been a consultant with working with all the people that I used to work with in a business role. I now work with them in strategizing and thinking through various issues as they are presented. Publishing is an interesting word. I know when I was in college, at one point I was going to be a writer, and my writing teacher said, I don't think so, Dick. Have you ever thought about publishing? And I said, no, but I'm glad he brought that up because it's the best job in the world. I've really enjoyed it and look forward to this conversation today.
Wonderful. Well, and I know that everybody's appreciated your role in leadership in the industry, as is the case with both Dan and Jana as well. So let's go ahead and jump into our first segment here. Typically, for those of you who've been listening to many of our shows, historically we've done something called You Can't Handle the Truth. We're trying a new segment actually this time. We don't want to get in a rut. And this one's actually called What's in a Name, and it actually has two different parts. We'll do the first part here at the beginning of our show, and we'll be talking about 4 different company names where it's not clear if the name describes what they actually do, and some discussion about where that name might come from. And then the second part that we'll talk about at the end. So hang on for that. We've got 4 fun company names that are not real company names, and we'll talk about what those companies might do given those fake names. So let's go ahead and start with his first set. one of the company names that we sort of pulled out, we looked for those that we thought weren't really clear what they do. So the first one is Nepris. Are any of the three of you familiar with the company Nepris?
Oh yeah. This is Dan. I know them. They make that ointment that's available only by prescription, and it's we won't talk about what it's used for, but that's what I would guess they're doing right now.
Anybody else want to take a guess what Nepris does?
Something connecting students and teachers with professionals and bringing that to school.
So did you look this up, or did you know this, Jama?
Oh, I've been doing my homework. Even Spanish cheating homework.
That won't work for the later segment, but I think you're right on with that in terms of really engaging students in science, tech, engineering, and STEM. Now, I'd love to hear from the gang at Nepris where the name Nepris comes from. Any thoughts about why that name would be?
It's got to be some combination of other words, but it's so undescriptive. I think it's a mistake.
Just by the structure of the word, it looks like whatever it is, it's not that. Any to me is like a negative.
Good point.
Or does it take away Pris? I'm not sure.
Which takes us back to the ointment conversation. Maybe we should go to the next company. This next one is called Capture Education. Any thoughts about what Capture Education does?
Well, I read it quickly. I thought it was
data, capturing data, right?
It's something with scheduling, something around that. Scheduling classrooms. I didn't got the idea exactly.
So the question is, why the name Capture Education? Dick, do you want to chime in?
I thought it was Capstone.
Go ahead, Dick.
I misread it. I read Capstone Education.
Well, that would be another group. We could certainly talk about Capstone as well, but with all our friends over there, that has a longer history, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
And Capstone is a very positive notion.
Yes.
But Capture, I'm not sure is. Capture the Flag was one of my favorite games when I was a kid. It can't, but it probably doesn't have anything to do with that.
I don't know that's the image that they're trying to portray. Go ahead, Dick.
They're trying to scheduling things, so I don't know how it's related to capturing education. It was more about capturing data. So I didn't get what we're doing by their name.
Right. The term capture, to me, sounds somewhat negative in terms of we don't think about capture. We think about luring or engaging, or capturing sounds like we're going to put them in a room and make something happen. So
it's like
maybe
it
has to do with maybe it's capturing the data, and we put it on display like in the zoo. Let's go to another one. This is one of my favorites, and this is Big Chalk. And probably you remember Big Chalk.
Yes.
Well, what do you think about Big Chalk?
And it is from the last millennium?
It is from the last millennium. Well, actually, I think it moved into the beginning of this millennium, too. Yeah.
The fifth millennium? I didn't get that.
The last millennium. Looking at it really around 1990, 6, 7, 8, right in that time frame?
That's where internet existed.
This is to talk loudly and carry a big chalk?
That's right.
I always thought it was a strange name because they were trying to, they're a technology company, but to put chalk in the name didn't ever make any sense to me.
No. And you remember some of their marketing? One was, I remember very clearly at a what was then NEC, now ISTE, which is actually going to be in Atlanta again in 2 weeks. At that same show, they had a big gorilla. So I'm not sure what the marketing message was about a big gorilla, big chalk, and software. Which of these things is different from the others? I don't know. They also had a VW Bug giveaway.
Marketing.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
So they now they really were really swallowed up by ProQuest. And
it
Eli
was not really advertising Europe,
Right, so they had no presence in Europe, you're saying, Jaume.
No, nothing at all.
Yeah, no gorillas in Europe.
No, not yet. We only had an albino one in Barcelona some years ago. That faded away.
In the zoo,
I remember going to their office once in New York, and it was a big office.
That's right.
Yeah, that's happened before. We've certainly seen that.
And it had a big stairway, if I remember correctly. Right, it was connecting floors, which I thought was extremely demonstrable of something, but I wasn't sure what.
Well, see that?
Yeah, too analog, not digital enough.
That bodes well for you, Jaume, because I remember visiting your office, and the stairs were circular, very small stairs. So you're obviously going to be wildly successful.
Yes, but we have no gorillas at our office.
You'll have to work on that.
Maybe.
I think I'm going to skip the last one. I think we've had a good conversation here about some of these names. I think what's in a name is important, and I find it forever curious. So again, we'll come to these really fun names that I've made up at the end of the show here. But let's go ahead, and I first want to thank our sponsor, MCA Strategic Data. They've been with us since the beginning. They do great work. They have a data solution to provide those who are serving the K-12 market with information about who's consuming your product, how they're consuming it, and contacts at those schools and school districts, and they're updated monthly. The changes in the market are happening more and more quickly, and so MCH is really your good partner to be able to work with you in terms of getting up-to-date information and making the most out of your promotional efforts. So, again, happy to put you in touch with Larry or whoever over at MCH, all a great gang to work with. So thank them for sponsoring us. Let's go into the topic now. And, again, we could start at a number of different places. Big publishers, this issue about they clearly, big publishers have had historically, a regular schedule. They knew that adoptions were going to happen every 6, 7, 8 years. They knew that they were going to spend 3-4 years preparing a product for that adoption. It was a juggernaut in terms of the processes. Maybe the three of you can reflect a little bit on those processes and maybe how they've had to shift. Anybody who wants to jump in?
Well, first of all, going back to the title, I want to remind you that when the British sent their ships at the Spanish Armada, they set several of their ships on fire so as to catch the Spanish Armada ships on fire. So I'm not sure how that might apply, but I'm afraid there are a lot of blazing ships right now.
I also want to remember that the Spanish Armada was really defeated by a huge, big storm, not by the British fleet. The British fleet only had to deal with their leftovers. Right. So this digital thing that we're living is like this big storm that is falling upon all of us.
These analogies are going to kill me before we're done.
I like the latter one better.
Yeah. Well, I'll start and invite others to disagree. Certainly, many of the things that publishers came to rely on have changed. There's still big adoptions, and they're still going on, and they still provide a lot of money to publishers. So let's not forget that. But Many of those adoptions have gone wide open. A couple of them have disappeared. Indiana, for instance, is not going to adopt education materials at all in the future except for reading. And, other places like Texas, which used to be the most locked down state on being prescriptive, has opened things wide open.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Texas has certainly done that before, and we haven't seen, if you look, it's probably been 20 years since they did their first digital adoption of some science and social science and other materials. Why now? I mean, what's going to create the change at this point? Because it didn't happen then.
I think the answer is hardware. We've got hardware that teachers want.
Well, and I think too, as we continue down this path, I mean, schools are more and more a part of the culture. They're not a building down at the end of Elm Street. They really are much more embraced by all aspects of media and communications and interactivity. And I think the states, by definition, have come to realize that and are doing these things which are totally different from anything they used to do in the past. I think that when you look at the big companies that existed and the way they exist today, and look at the small companies, I think the change has been extremely exciting, because what the big companies did, or not willingly or not, is kind of open up pathways for the little company, or for little parts of the company, which were smaller than the other parts. I know I was at Harcourt for years, and Harcourt was a traditional large basal company in part, but quickly, and to its advantage, I think, changed that path long before anyone else and started to do all these small things, some of which were well-advised and others which were not. But it opened up avenues to different markets, both domestically and internationally. We had a large international business early on, and by that I mean bringing American products abroad as opposed to just bringing international products into America. But the thing that was great about it is that it started that connection between home and school that I think is all important. And so the Spanish Armada and the British fleets may very well meet up for a picnic, as opposed to just defeating each other. Be nice.
Quite the picture. Jaume, tell us your perspective.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about this European experience, and I've been working for a shed and all of these European publishers that we have to fight a lot with interventionist governments that we have, that they are putting all this digital content for free. So we have to move very, very fast. And what I've seen is that the big publishers, usually they try to create digital office or outsourcing the change. But if you outsource a change, it's very difficult to make the change within. And this is the main challenge, to change the company from within. Right now, the money is coming more from the paper still than from the digital. And we are just trying to change that inside. And so the people that are working on the paper have to understand that maybe the paper will go away, and we're trying that they understand that they should also work digital, not creating something different, but for bigger publishers, it's not so easy to make this big change.
I think Jaume has really hit the nail on the head with that explanation, and I would agree. It is a transformative process. Quite some time ago, about 15 years ago, I started working in the publishers I was working for on trying to make that significant change, and certainly accelerated that when I headed up McGraw-Hill. But boy, is that difficult to do. It's a very difficult thing to do because print does still bring in most of the money. There was an article, in fact, in the Times, New York Times, just I think over the weekend about how they're trying to transform their business, and they've transformed it rather successfully. A lot of the attention, most of the viewers of the news on the Times come in digitally, but most of the money still comes in from the print, and this is true in educational resources. In fact, Simba, which is one of the more adept market research and observers of the educational instructional area, still predicts that revenues for print for publishers are going to continue to go up at a slower pace than digital, but are still going to go up for the next few years. So it's a very difficult thing to invest in both.
Yeah, I agree with you. I remember talking to someone from McGraw-Hill on the paper side, and then he was telling me that they were making the money, and with this money they were subsidizing the cool guys on the digital side that were spending the money. And in principle, they were the ones who will finally end up with the paper side. So, he had really weird feeling about subsidizing someone that will end up with his own job.
Yeah, but it's happened in many industries, and I think for some time now, publishers, if you want to call them that, or instructional providers, are going to have one foot on each side of the fence, and unfortunately that fence is getting taller and taller every day. Yeah,
but the guy that is on the paper side also has to start intervening on the digital side, so he doesn't feel apart. And that's,
right.
I know, in our company, just told everyone, hey, you are making layouts for paper, just think that next month I am not going to print anything in paper, so start just thinking digital.
Yeah.
Everyone was really scared.
Yeah.
I am still printing paper, but
sure.
You need to make a statement there.
Well, it is going to be a longer transition than some people predict. There's, in fact, today on the web, Forbes magazine has an article about how slow schools have been to adopt digital compared to businesses, and this is an article that could have appeared 25 years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago, and it'll appear 10 years from now, but will still be much farther along the road and much transformed in that period of time.
But right now in Europe, you cannot sell any more K-12 paper book without digital content.
Yeah, that's true here too. Mostly, there are still small companies that are doing well.
I think when you say it's taken 20 years to make this transition, that's not a long time. I mean, it's phenomenally quick compared to how long it's taken other parts of the education industry to change, or industries in general to change. I mean, technology has had an enormous success rate. I mean, the internet was only started in 90, or really got off the ground in 95, and do we ever talk about anything else? And also the amount of interactivity. The library, for example, is everywhere digital. I recently participated in a charrette and hoping to redesign the resource library for K-12 kids at the Mount Vernon building in Washington, and it was amazing how quickly the kids were giving direction to these people who didn't take directions from anyone because of how they were going to be using this resource. And it was like, well, do it your way and we won't come, or do it our way and we'll be there every day, that kind of stuff. And it wasn't long before they were doing it their way. To walk into the facility now, has anyone been at Mount Vernon lately? It was incredible to watch this beautiful facility high above the hills, overlooking the water. It's now having the machines everywhere, if you will. Although there are plenty of books. Don't get me wrong; we haven't changed the bookcases.
Right.
But people I think electronically. I mean, we're forced. I mean, just as we were forced as children to start thinking about the Reader's Guide to Periodical Literature or the card catalog. We've been forced to think that way now with different locators and different pathways to information, and I think it's happening very quickly. I'm quite excited about it.
And I think the Spanish Armada is reacting. I know that my successor at McGraw-Hill, Peter Cohn, who I think the world of, has continued to make those changes that we began with new talent. They've continued to transform the physical working space there. They're continuing to acquire small companies and large to quickly expand their skill base. They've got new locations, even as they're considering closing down other locations. There's a big, and of course, the most important thing is the change in the workforce, and they're doing training as well as changing job titles, as well as, frankly, seeing to it that some people leave, even as they bring in new people with new talents.
All right. Right. Well, today I can't help it.
Go ahead.
Yes, Michael.
I was just going to quickly add, today I can't help but thinking of Rick Abrams died over the weekend, as you may know, and to me, it's one of the true leaders in the digital part of our industry, not giving him content or any other types of educational objectives in any way. So I remember working with him when they were, just starting out, and it was a different place. It was a different feeling. It was a different sense. The workers were different. The pace was different. The content was being massaged so that it would become different. And that's the thing I see happening, even in every company now. The large McGraw-Hills and Houghton Mifflins and others, but it's happening every place. So again, I'm very excited by what I see.
So I want to break for the next segment. I was going to mention about Rick at the end of the show for sure. Since you've already brought that up, Dick, I do want to say, I think Rick was a very, very special person. I think really exemplified the very nature of how this industry is so different from so many. Tom Snyder could not have been successful as Tom Snyder Productions without Rick. And Rick, although a business person, really brought the heart of what really makes this industry tick. So I personally will miss Rick quite a bit. Saw him last in
further
December.
Testimony to the fact that quality will out in our industry because those products were really something special.
Absolutely. Well, with that said, let's go to the next segment quickly. We'll come back. Actually, I want to talk when we come back a little bit about, can we sustain print and digital simultaneously? We'll also come back and talk about what happens as these companies acquire smaller organizations, and how do they incorporate change, or do they, as part of that process. One of the ways that we compensate our guests indirectly for their participation on the show is we actually give them $50 to spend on whichever Donors Choose project they want. Donors Choose is an organization where educators can actually post projects that they want to have funded, and anybody, parents, businesses, others, can contribute towards that project. And I think it really gets at the very heart of good teaching and the passion that educators bring for their students and their teaching. So let me go ahead. Each one of you give maybe a minute, quick description of the project that you selected. Dick, are you ready to talk about yours?
Well, I can't remember which one I ended up with because there were two that I was thinking about. One is called Lights, Camera, Action, It's a project that is working in the LA schools in close conjunction with their media centers, and it's basically trying to take nonfiction books and make them meaningful to a digital audience. They're using equipment and talent that's been donated, and they're really creating a whole new way of taking those reference books and opening them up. And I think it's an exciting project, and it's one that I would truly support. But I also think,
and that's the one that's the one you did select. So you can go ahead and describe the other quickly.
Well, the other one is equally exciting and has a whole different emphasis. It's really about getting kids to open books and to read them, to take them to heart, to use them as resources, and just to become more serious in the fact that they are partners in life with these things, these books, and to get a group of basically non-readers from a rural community in Tennessee to hop on board and to try to make the transition from one to the other, just as every cultural aspect of any of our cultures have had to do over the years. So either one and both of them are just two of the many that I feel strongly supportive of.
Good. Well, thanks again for selecting that one, Dick. Dan, let's go to you. Solving Mysteries. It's what we do.
Yeah, this is a great operation. It's a high school in a high poverty area in Louisiana where they are attempting to improve science education by using kits that encourage students to solve problems in forensic science. And while I think an important part of education is memorizing stuff, the most important thing is you memorize it for a reason, and that is why constructivist or whatever kind of education you want to call it, project-based learning is so important. And in this case, it's projects that really motivate students to learn. And so the donations went to helping to acquire these kits so that the students could actually do science, not just memorize science.
Perfect. Thanks again for selecting that, Dan. And last, Jama, you selected Amazing Students in Need of Inspiring Novel, The Snow Children. And I know that there are no, right now, this organization, Donors Choose, doesn't have any projects in Europe. So thanks for selecting one here in the U.S.
Okay. No, it's nice because I think that inspiring novels is always very important, and they were trying to raise money so every kid can get one of them. But I choose the novel because The Snow Child can be also inspiring for the publishing industry. It's about two adults, a couple, that go to Alaska, and they create a snowman. And this snowman, which is something virtual and doesn't exist, then changes into a kid. And this kid, which is real, starts changing back the way they behave. So it was kind of a metaphor of what the new things are bringing and how the new things, like Snow Child, this digital or Snow Child can change the publishing companies, from inside.
Right. That's
very nice.
He's a smart guy, isn't he?
Inspiring. Yeah, it's from Airway and Eyesight. I will recommend this to all publishing CEOs.
Well, thank you to all three of you for selecting that. We really, again, enjoy supporting Donors Choose. If you go to the website, I believe that we have posted some of the feedback that we've gotten from those who have received the support from our guests, and I can just tell you, they're all very appreciative for that support. So, thanks. Let's continue our conversation about big publishers. The two items, and one of them, I think, a couple of maybe even 3 years ago, is the immense effort that's required to maintain both print and digital editions of instructional materials. And I know, Jama, you were talking about that you're going primarily digital, but then how do you create the print? I mean, doing one or the other seems seems manageable. Doing both, it seems like we're at a very, very difficult transition point.
Yeah, and I think that concerning this Armada, we need like smaller, faster boats, and not only going from sailing to fuel boats, but also to electric boats. What it means that when we're going digital, we're going to computers, to PCs, we're going to tablets. It's changing so fast. So you need to design for paper, for tablets, for different software, for these operating systems, and it's really, really complicated. So I think that we're choosing kind of standard like HTML5, and then trying to blend solutions between paper and digital. So right now in Europe, what we're doing is selling paper books and giving them with a digital license for 1 year or for 4 years, depending on the company.
Mm-hmm.
So just going for these blending solutions and look how paper books will also transform.
Dan, what's your perspective on that?
I would I would say the most important thing is that I learned over the last 10 or 15 years is making tougher decisions faster. I think far too often, especially in the bigger publishing houses, people would come up with an idea and would work on it, and it seemed like a good idea, and it would take forever to get a business plan together. I mean, we could go on and on about some of the difficulties around that. And then once they got going on it, if it turned out that market conditions changed, as certainly they have with digital, or just for any reason, they'd continue to work on it because they had so many people committed to it and a lot of money committed to it. Those days have got to be gone, and people are going to have to take frequent, hard looks at their projects because you just cannot waste the money when you have to address both a digital and a print world, and increasingly, of course, more digital.
Yeah, but the problem is that if you invest like 5 years ago in Flash, tablets come and then you have to throw away everything you invested in Flash.
Right.
It's not so easy to take decisions. And for bigger companies
true.
that you need to planify a little bit in advance, at least 1 or 2 years, and technology is changing so fast, I think it's hard for big publishers to do that.
Well, another thing that publishers have to do, and I've tried it and succeeded and also failed at it, is creating smaller teams that move faster, rewarding people for making good decisions rather than just staying the course regardless of where they're going. It's a very big change in the culture of what used to be called a publishing company.
Mm-hmm.
That's still an anomaly, isn't it? Wouldn't you say?
What, you mean moving fast?
Moving fast,
Yeah,
small teams.
I'm not sure it's an anomaly. I think it's happening more and more. I think what we'll find is in a Malthusian world in publishing these days is that those who do it are going to be happy and making money in 10 years, and those who don't will be something we reminisce about.
Right. I mean, at some point, remember, we introduced the book, so if we got over that hump, we could get over any hump.
That's true. I loved those scrolls, though. They were great.
They were great. They were really nice. They were and you always had, like, scratch paper.
Yeah.
No, I mean, really, when you think, I think a lot of what we're talking about now, or a lot of what this industry is facing about now, has been faced over the years because of because of international variety and variation and preferences and approach, a lot because of where people were on a continuum of technology and other types of readiness skills. I mean, readiness skills being what they are always going to be different. It's not for us to dictate where they should be. It's just to respond. I mean, publishers forget that what they are is more the traditional publisher role to me is kind of bringing to a large market the variety and the depth of what is being discussed, explored, reviewed, denied, whatever other active word you can put in there. But going to the book fairs in Europe for years always led me to a better understanding of where I was and where I wasn't. And I think we're now, as a technology, partially technology-driven world, we're coming to grips with the very same thing. You can't turn on television without seeing something about Silicon Valley, and for half the people in publishing, they spent half their lives in Silicon Valley. You can't deny that any more than you can deny the Basel that brought us up through fifth grade. Almost destroyed us, but nevertheless got us through fifth grade.
But that's not the only problem that publishers are dealing with. I mean, if you want to talk about another huge bifurcation in the industry, it's deciding how to handle the Common Core, which maybe isn't going to be so common. Everyone was confident 4 or 5 years ago that they finally had a direction that they could really put their chips on the table with. But that appears to be evaporating in many places, but not in many others. So, publishers or instructional materials providers have got three-dimensional problems here, not just digital versus print, but Common Core versus non-Common Core, and we could go into a bunch of others.
Well, I think I agree with that. I think bringing that point up, Dan, is enormously important, and should not be forgotten so easily, by the masses. I don't know I don't even know what Common Core means. I mean, like at 5 o'clock, we're supposed to know how to spell certain words that we didn't know how to spell at 4 o'clock, or are we just talking about things that should be covered? Is it important to know the process by which Spain passes a law? I mean, I think that commonality is not the same as desirability. I think there's an importance in keeping people at somewhat of an even keel. But anybody who thinks that we're all going to learn certain objectives at 5 o'clock every afternoon, I find to be kidding themselves. Common Core is defined by everybody somewhat differently, and therefore is not as common as one would maybe, as we publishers might want to have it, because if there were a Common Core, then we'd know exactly what to publish, and that's not the case. It never will be. That's what's wonderful about publishing. It's a variety of ways to express information, and I think I'm not against teaching people for providing a even base of knowledge from which to grow, but I am against forcing them into pigeonholes that they might not want to explore.
Sometimes I like to see what other industries have done, and when I look at the phone companies, I can see that different strategies, and as a big publisher, you can decide either if you want to do something like Apple, which means you create your own ecosystem in the digital market, or you can be like other phone companies that just embraced similar system like Android. So you have to choose what you want to do. Do you want to create your own ecosystem, or do you want to embrace a more common system? And there are pros and cons about that. If you embrace your own ecosystem, everything is more usable, and maybe your customers would be happier because everything can work because it's your own system. But then it's a smaller market. But these kinds of decisions are the ones that big publishers are facing.
Yes.
Well, I hate to cut off the conversation. This is an important topic. I need to come back to this again. And I will definitely get back in touch with the three of you if we're going to continue the discussion. But right now, I think we've had some good conversation around the nature of big publishers, some of the challenges that they're facing, and where that fits into the marketplace. So thank you, the three of you, for taking on that topic. We're going to come back to the segment now on What's in a Name, and this is where you're going to get the 4 fictitious names and just some quick banter about what you think the company might do. And so these are all made-up company names as far as I know. I didn't know of companies. So the first one is a company that we're calling Pacify, P-A-S-S-I-F-Y. What do you think Pacify might do?
Well, that's clearly like Google Glass, but it's something for babies to suck on.
No, we call
I
those
don't know. But, I know gadget pacifying schools, the classrooms, taking it easy.
Right.
You notice the spelling of the word without the C, but with the double S. Any thoughts about why that might be the case?
Yes, because we can certify people who pass.
Which is important as part of the pacification process, I think. So,
right.
The next one that we have, the next company, I was quite pleased when I thought of this name. This is Assessnatist.
I don't think you should have been pleased.
You don't think so?
Nothing personal.
Say more, Dan.
Obviously, this has to do with testing. I got that much out of it. But beyond that, unfortunately, just looking at the word reminds me of assassin, so that's not good.
Yes, it's like kind of Spanglish, like more like a murderer than assessing.
Yeah.
Dick, any thoughts?
Not immediately, no.
Okay, so actually, the core for that, at least the fun I was playing with that was the term anesthetist, as in.
Michael, you're too tricky.
Well, so I thought putting assessment and assessmentist together was a good reflection on the nature of the market, possibly. The next one is sorcerer.
Well, actually, it's like it's a program to manage sheet music files on an iPad. So actually, it does exist.
Is it? No, it is a real product.
Yeah, it's a real product. Like Sorcerer, the musician's sheet music manager. I found it.
I would say if you were to name a product that there'd be a few states I could name where it wouldn't be a politically positive thing.
That would be their number one product. Yes. Yeah, I'll agree with Dan on that.
And the last one I saw as being a Japanese product that possibly gets imported, and you can imagine which state might be open to. This one's called Texon.
Right.
Maybe a learning.com competitor in terms of technology training or something, but maybe specifically focused at Texas.
Oh, jeez.
Well, it's a big state. I mean, I know
it is.
I know textbooks that have gone over the top for them.
Yeah, you'd need to change the spelling for them to be happy about that.
Yeah, and actually, it's also like it's an Indian company about advanced IT solutions for schools.
Oh, it exists as well?
Yeah, it also exists in India, actually. So it's already international. They already got the name from there.
Good thing to know. Well,
I think you better copyright these names fast before they're stolen.
Yeah. I think it's already copyrighted.
Yeah, I think that's right. Zama's already purchased the URL, so the domain name.
Yeah,
so
it's already done, and all Latin America. That's done.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
well, I do want to again, at this point in the program, thank our sponsor, MCH Strategic Data, for again all their support. And I know you'll see them at ISTE. If you want to schedule a meeting with them, you certainly can contact me or contact Larry or Joan or the gang over there. Again, I'm impressed with the work that they're doing, and I really appreciate their sponsorship of Ed Table Talk. Let's talk quickly. This is a segment we call Gaming the Conference. We may not do all the ones we have listed here, guys, but let's go ahead and start out, Dick, with ALA. Tell us, why should somebody go to ALA, and how should they think about that?
Well, the American Library Association, I think, is the single most important conference. It's gone off track a lot over the years. I think it's pulling itself back on. But the whole idea of a repository of knowledge and giving access to anyone as their right to that knowledge, and then being committed to showing them how to access and utilize that information has my vote each and every time. And it doesn't matter how old you are. It taught me that I liked mysteries. It taught me that I liked science, and now a few years later it taught me that I could program. You know, it's just the center of where we are as a people. Sharing our ideas, storing them someplace, multiple languages, digital and regular. And, you know, to see a book written in French and Spanish and Italian as well as English when I was a kid was remarkable. I mean, these people had the same ideas in different languages, and now to see the same things working in different cartoon characters and different colors and different, what do you call those things, programmed sequences. Tremendous. And American Library Association, and it has a group within that group called LITA, which is Libraries in Information Technology, which has tried to look at some of the key issues of providing accessibility and utilization opportunities to people. So I'm all for ALA, and I encourage anyone who has not been there to think about it, and I encourage, et cetera, et cetera.
Perfect. And that's the 26th of June through the 1st of July in Las Vegas. You'll want to stay indoors probably.
There are two major meetings a year, and that's the consumer meeting more than anything else, and then there's a business meeting in January. But this used to draw 30,000 people. It's gone downhill significantly. I don't know what Las Vegas is going to do to it, but it really it's remarkable to talk to, and it brings. Oh, one last thing, libraries are one place in the world that bring together all these different TV stars, these technology whizzes, as well as the authorship that we all revere so much. So, my vote.
Perfect. At the same time, by the way, is ISTE. Those of you who don't know about it, contact us June 28th through July 1st in Atlanta. Dan, tell us quickly about EdNet, September 28th through 30th in Baltimore.
EdNet's always in September. It's one of the biggest and most important of the technology conferences for educational technology providers. It really is a great networking conference. It's set up. Even the program is one of the best I've ever seen for as an attendee directory. It's got all the big names. It brings in thought leaders, government officials, as well as thought leaders within the industry. It doesn't have concurrent sessions, so if you don't like what they're going to talk about, you shouldn't go. But it's always a great conference, and it always ends with a fascinating thing called View from the Catbird Seat, where several thought leaders talk about what they have learned from the conference and would project to the future.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. And last, we have a number of book fairs coming up. Frankfurt is coming up October 8th through 12th. And so tell us in 30 seconds, if you can, Jaume, about the one in Guadalajara.
15 seconds is the biggest one in the Ibero-America. It's holding the 29th of November, and there are 44 countries and nearly 2,000 publishers represented there, and it's really fast growing.
So those of you who are involved in South America, Latin America, that is the place to be. And you'll find
sure. It's in Mexico, and this year Argentina is a country invited there. Yes.
Perfect.
And it is a great conference.
And the food is excellent.
And they've good margaritas.
There we go. So I want to thank our three guests. Absolutely wonderful. This is also the last show that Tila Evans is going to be producing. So I want to thank Tila for putting on 9 wonderful shows. And our new producer, Rakaya Wells, is with us here today, and she'll be taking this over. So thanks to both of them for all of their efforts. Our next show is on July 22nd at the usual time. Standards everywhere. The technical side to education standards. We're running out of time, guys, so you don't get a chance to do what you would tell a publishing company. But thank you all very much. I look forward to hearing, and listening to all of you on Ed Table Talk next month. And remember, you can get this on iTunes as well. Thank you, MCH. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you all.
Thanks, Michael. Bye.
Thanks, Paul. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.